Divorced men of Reddit, what moment with your former wife made me think yup, I'm asking this girl to divorce me? When my buddies approached me to complain that she kept sitting on their laps, wiggling, and hoping for an erection. I was a lance corporal bringing home scraps for a paycheck to an unemployed wife who one day brought home a brand new Lexus 350 because she got a good deal on it. Apparently I was supposed to pay the $800 mobile. I didn't think it was a good deal. Not me, but one of my best friends. He got a pretty substantial year-end bonus from work. He decided to use most of it for his wife's Christmas gift and pay off her remaining student loans. $14,700, and the remaining portion to buy a new computer chair for when he gamed. $300. Christmas morning, he was nice enough to let me stay at his place when I traveled for work as he lived 20 minutes from the airport. We all woke up and had breakfast. His family and her parents came over and we started exchanging gifts. Besides paying off her loans, he had gotten her a few small items. She opened the card saying her loans were paid off. She just sat there for a minute. After the silence, and assuming she was kinda in shock, she asked, "Did you seriously not get me anything else? I bought you that stupid keyboard, the wrong one BTW, and you only got me a few things?" At that point, his brother-in-law and myself decided to go hang out in another room for a while. They ended up getting into a huge fight. A day later when he was dropping me off at the airport, he told me that he was going to visit a lawyer and get a divorce. When she falsely told our marriage counselor that I punched her, the next week, she denied saying it and accused our counselor of lying. He gave me a "you should leave this relationship" look. I took that look as permission from a professional that I definitely wasn't making the wrong decision. Got divorced and never looked back. I legitimately feared for my safety towards the end. Not that she would hurt me, but that she would make a false accusation to the cops or a crazy friend. She let me know she was pregnant and wanted my permission to tell all her girlfriends during a girls' night out. Since I knew there was no possible way it was my child, she was also unknowingly admitting to having an affair. I can math, and she can't. It was with her boss. Lawyered up the next day, and he ate her alive in court. I got primary custody of our child we already had, and child support, and a sheriff's notice that she had to vacate my home in 30 days. I never knew she could be that stupid. When a friend's wife said to me, "You know your wife is sleeping with my husband." That's a pickup line if I ever heard one. The morning I saw a picture of some dude's dong on her phone, she was classy enough to bring him to the divorce proceedings. "Your Honor, I would like to present Exhibit D into evidence." When she staged a robbery of our house so she could pawn all of my crap for drug money. When my stepdaughter became a teenager, my ex ramped up the nutso. She had always been an impatient, angry screamer of a parent. But as my stepdaughter became a young woman, my ex just went crazy with envy or something. I know lots of moms have a hard time with teenage daughters, but their base level patience is so much better than my ex's was. Threats of cutting hair in middle of night while daughter slept, pulling hair, slapping face, ridiculing in front of her friends, swinging something that missed and put a hole in the wall. I was out with the kids. My wife was around less and less, had to be free to live her life, go out with her friends. More often than not she would call me to pick our daughter up from daycare. After promising to pick her up and have some girl time, just tell her I'm working late or not feeling well. She always had something better to do and the kids were old enough to know better. I went to pick our daughter up one day. When they called her name she came running over until she saw it wasn't mom. Again, slumped her shoulders and slowly walked over to ask what's her excuse. This time that was the breaking point. Told her to get out, even helped pay her security deposit to get her out. She made me watch Oprah and there was a quiz, "Is your marriage okay or not?" type thing. In my head I saw 7 or 10 items that were not okay. She didn't see any. We had already been to counseling. I was working on a mother-daughter scrapbook as a Christmas present for her. Was going through her Google Photos account looking for pics of them together. Came across a selfie she took with some dude laying on her. Confirmed her second affair. Knew it was over the moment I saw it. That has fricked me up pretty good. We flew across the country for her sister's wedding. She didn't say a word to me the entire time since we had parked at the airport. Once we landed at our destination, we walked to baggage claim. Absolute silence preceding for several hours now. At the carousel, I picked up her bag when she took it out of my hand and calmly stated, "None of my family knows you're here." I told them I came alone. She walked out of the airport and left me there. Narcissistic personality disorder made for some really fun scenarios. During the last year and a half of our marriage, she became extremely psychologically abusive. She was a narcissist, controlled my every move, would isolate me, refused physical contact. I was just an extension to her life, was not allowed to talk to any female, was not allowed to hang out with any friends, or she would ignore me for up to 5 days at a time. Double standards everywhere, verbal abuse, and the list can continue, but it hurts to think about. The last straw for me was when she threatened to kill me because I came home from work late even though she knew I would be home late. It was just a little too late for her, and she also threatened to hit me the same day. This was the second time this happened, and I talked with several people at work about it and they suggested that I run. I had texts of the threats on my phone and contacted a lawyer that same week. She agreed to sign since I told her I would take severe legal action if she didn't. Thankfully no children, and it was a clean divorce, and I'm happily divorced. I used to love to do chores for her because she loved being taken care of. When she stopped noticing, it started hurting. Then one day I made a bench for our entryway out of barnwood. Took about 40 hours of work. She walked in the house after work that day and sat her purse on it and proceeded to start the fight, where she told me that she was mad she got married to me. She stormed out of the house grabbing her purse. Never noticed the bench was there. I knew then, but I think she already knew. When my 2-year-old was learning to talk, he would consistently say another bloke's name. Apparently he was there the moment I left for work till when I got home. Single dad for 5 years with primary custody now. Finding her on Christmas Eve, still sexting a co-worker whom she claimed she was no longer in contact with, having been busted sexting him previously. Also, I cleared out of there like a blackjack dealer. Ho ho ho. When I, as the only earner in the house, was denied buying a new pair of work boots in December because she needed the money to buy vaccines for the puppies. She bred dogs as a hobby. I was a framing carpenter in Ohio. My current work boots were toast holes in both. No soles. I needed them. Her puppy vaccine story was BS. Her hobby was dogs, but she was a pro at popping pills. That's what she needed the money for. I was done with her by March. I found out she cheated on me, and upon me confronting her to discuss it, she manipulated me into thinking she was suicidal. Then she admitted the manipulation. Done. She may have once been a nice person. That's all gone now. My neighbor's wife screaming putana downstairs after she caught my bride and her husband fricking in front of the fireplace. This happened to one of my parents' friends. Both couples did a swap and are now happily married. When she moved out while I was camping with 2 of our sons, and there was no discussion of whether her leaving was permanent or potentially temporary in her view. When I saw the text from her lover that said something to the effect of "I miss your dong in my ass," and I rubbed one out in the gym shower thinking of you. B never sent me texts like that in 10 years of marriage. Still have the text saved somewhere in a divorce file. This was not the first affair, but it was the one that finished it for me. Not a wife but a fiancé. Just called it off because we were house hunting and she kept wanting to look at houses that would accommodate an extra permanent guest, her estranged father whom she was wanting to reinitiate ties with, but wouldn't admit to it. Found out from a buddy that she was wanting me to lay out the money for the down payment and then was going to break it off herself and fight like heck to keep the house to herself. 2 years down the drain, but a lifetime of a fortunate near miss. When she said, "You didn't pray hard enough and that's why our son has cancer. That's why I am sleeping with my prayer partner." That woman takes the cake for queen of rationalizations. I endured a physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship for over 6 years with my first wife, 4 of which we were married. There were many instances that should have caused our marriage's demise. The proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, though, was 8 days after I had major oral surgery. Due to a freak medical occurrence, I had to have 28 teeth cut out and 2 holes drilled into my sinus cavities from top of the back of my gums. She and I were in a grocery store parking lot, and I asked her not to start an argument in the store because it's a small town and I was so tired of being those people. Her reaction was to backhand me in the mouth 6 times, or at least I counted 6 times because I'm pretty dang sure I lost consciousness. I just remember waking up when we were pulling into our driveway while she's freaking out because my face is against the window and blood is coming from my mouth like a fountain. I left for work at 6 AM and forgot to unplug the toaster. When I arrived home at 6 PM, I was given the everything you've ever done to pee me off speech just for leaving the toaster plugged in. I asked her what she did all day that prevented her from unplugging it herself. Another I'm and butthole speech. I said something to the effect of quit acting like your freaking mother. She threw the cat at me. A cat. She threw a freaking cat at me. Our daughter at 3 years old told us to stop yelling. I was at work and got a call from my grandparents that she had shot our dog, Zoe, that was laying on the bed with her. We were separated before that for other reasons, but that's when I ponied up a few grand and went to an attorney to file. I really miss her, the dog, I mean. When she asks me to take the kids on some errands, has kept me celibate for months saying she is ace now, and once I leave invites some guy over to tongue lash her for 45 minutes and then drop a load inside her in the bedroom without a condom, all on the day before Father's Day. Thanks Amy, not divorced yet. This happened last week. Her life is in such shambles I am not even mad. I was on deployment and she yelled at me for interrupting her family celebration when I called on Christmas. For the first one, I was working late and the daycare calls and asked if I'm picking up my kids. I left work to go get them. When I got home she was gone. Didn't hear anything from her for 2 weeks. For the second one, the third time I bailed the house out of foreclosure because she wouldn't pay the bills. Even though there was money in the accounts to cover it, I closed the account, handed her cash for the mortgage, packed a bag my kids and left. When I found evidence of the last affair, as soon as I heard it, I knew that was the end, and there would never be anything else there. We had a trial separation and lived apart for a month. During this time I vented off some of my frustrations to one of my best friends. Come to find out said friend was fricking my wife behind my back. They both attempted to manipulate my emotions so that I wouldn't think anything suspicious, but goddamn my intuition always had my back. Always trust your gut folks, even when your head isn't where it should be. When we went on a family vacation and I hoped she'd sleep the entire time so I could have fun with our son, my sister said something similar about her ex. He had to go out of town for a business trip and she found that being a single parent was less work than having him be around. Then he fricked one of her friends, and her first thought was finally an excuse to kick him out. We met and spent the first 7 years of our married life on the West Coast, then moved east. 5 years later, I took a job back on the West Coast, but it was the middle of the school year, so I went out ahead and lived on my own until everyone could join me. Things hadn't been very good between us for a while, but I hadn't articulated it to her, or even myself, beyond vague feelings of dissatisfaction. One weekend, out there on my own, I decided to take a day and drive to one of my favorite towns, a town in which I had lived long before I knew her, a town we had visited often while married. It was late afternoon, was about to head back to my hotel when I realized that I could visit a particular beach that had special meaning to me from my earlier life there. I stopped at a convenience store, grabbed a grolsch like I used to drink on that beach, and drove out there, hiked out to a specific spot I remembered, sat down, popped the beer, and looked out over the ocean. And it hit me that I hadn't done that in over 20 years. Whenever we'd visit the area, I'd suggest stopping at the beach, but she wasn't interested and would always veto the idea. I'm sure reading this it seems like the tiniest thing, but it was the catalyst for me realizing just how completely dissatisfied I was with our relationship. I think from the time I sat down, I knew it was over within maybe 10 minutes. Just sitting there, sipping my beer, looking at the ocean. Preface: we were doing a trial separation. She moved into the spare bedroom of our apartment. Divorce had been thrown around, but we still spent time together and slept together. I wasn't seriously considering divorce, but rather counseling, etc. Up until the day I came home from work at the same time I came home every day and she was in her room being fricked by some random guy she met on Tinder. She had not told him she was married. I kicked him out of the apartment and made it clear to her I would be moving out as soon as possible. When I found the letter between her and my friend about their affair and how she couldn't wait to be away from me so they could be together, yup, I knew then that it was time to get that divorce. She required a much more varied selection of dongs than I was able to provide, so she went out and acquired them herself while I was stationed overseas in the Air Force. When she physically attacked me in front of our then 11-year-old son, I'd been pondering the idea for a while. That was the clincher. When I realized I didn't get along very well with her boyfriend. In marriage counseling, me, I love you, X, I settled on you. 15 years in, and I find texts on her phone, completely blindsided, no clue she had it in her to cheat, told me it was just texting, begged for forgiveness, I caved. A month later, checked the phone bill to find that it never stopped, confronted her again. Cue more begging and more denial on my part that she would let the life we had built go down in flames. This went on for a few months, so many promises. One night, I caught her on the phone when she thought I had left. Suddenly it's not just texts. Sometimes it was phone calls too. Just a friend she could talk to that she let things go too far with. Promised to break all contact. Swore it was never physical. Then I found emails. She detailed things that made me sick to read, but also included descriptions of his house. She broke finally, but swore it was all just in the line of duty. That's how she met, you see, visiting nurse service, and this guy was a client. Promised she was done. Loved me, you see. No chance she was going to let 15 years go like that. I wasn't buying it anymore though. She announced she was going out one night with a work friend. Promised they were only going to the bar, then she'd be home. Maybe late, but not too late. She had taken over her own phone account by then, but wasn't bright enough to understand that Google Latitude was still showing me where she was, and I wasn't about to show my hand. She kissed me goodbye and beelined right for his house, and was there until the wee hours of the morning. Once I knew where she had headed, I called her dad and my best friend to keep me from doing anything dumb. I will love them both forever for keeping me calm while my world went freaking insane all around me. My father-in-law offered to stay with the kids and wait for her to get home. Around 3 AM, while couch surfing my buddy's place, she sent me a nasty text asking where the frick I thought I was. I texted her a screenshot of her little GPS dot at her boyfriend's and let her know I'd be sending her some paperwork soon. You have been visited by the Be Humble Be Stay Humble and Believe in Yourself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.